Think of a world that was all the same colour. The birds in the sky, the sea, the land, the people. Think of a world where everyone looks the same, wears the same clothes, has the same interests. Life would be pretty mundane and boring, wouldn't it? At this time of year, we see the plants changing and the flowers blooming. Every year, nature goes through 4 seasons. People also change and grow, just like the plants. They change physically. They change emotionally. They change because of life events that happen. And of course, we all look different. If I was standing in the Shepherd Hall just now, instead of sat in J1, I'd be looking out at 360 of you, all in the same uniform. And yet, you would all be different. Your hair is different. Your eyes are different. Your skin colour is different. Your height and shape are different. There's been a lot of news recently about something called Black Lives Matter and the protest that started in America as a result of 3 consecutive murders that happened to black people by white people. There was no reason why any of these 3 people died. They were murdered. Their deaths were nothing to do with the pandemic. They were a result of cultural issues in America to do with racism and prejudice. Issues that have not been dealt with for many, many years. Issues that exist not just in America, but in many countries, including the UK and including York. Everybody's lives matter equally, and it is nothing to do with what colour your skin is. Looking at the protests on the TV that have been happening all over the world, you can watch and see the news describing violence and looting, and think, that's not good. And you're right, it isn't. But remember, there will always be bad people who will try to take advantage of a situation. The protesters were protesting peacefully, and the looters and rioters were causing trouble. But the misbehaviour of those looting should not be the focus of the news. The purpose of the protests is change, and that's what we should be focusing on. Changing the attitudes of prejudice that exist. There's much information around about racism and prejudice that we can educate ourselves with, and this is something we should all be doing. We look at racism and other groups of people who may be victimised for being different to others in different ways each year here at school. J5, you have studied the slave trade this year. J4, you are currently studying Martin Luther King and looked at the Holocaust last term. J3, you have studied Al Capone irons my shirts, about a boy with Asperger's. J2, you looked at Oranges in No Man's Land, about the civil war in Lebanon. And J1, you've read Christoph's story about a refugee who's bullied at school. Whilst learning more about racism and prejudice is vital, it's ultimately empathy that leads to education and a change of heart. We need to have a willingness to accept and embrace others and not ask them to be like us before we accept them. There are lots of questions that we all have, and silence never achieved anything, certainly not unity. So we need to ask those questions. Talk to your parents about racism and prejudice. Ask them what their views are. We need to educate ourselves. We need to empathise with those that are hurting. We need to accept those who are different from us, in whatever way they are different. But this cannot happen unless we actively choose to challenge our own ideas and understand someone else's point of view. One of our 5 core expectations here at St Peter's 8 to 13 is treat others as you want to be treated. And that has never been more true. It doesn't matter if people are different to you. That's what makes life interesting. We need to be a school family that accepts and loves everyone in our school community and beyond, irrespective of colour, race, religion, or however they might be different from ourselves, and treat them as we would want to be treated.